The steady beep of hospital monitors filled the room as Marcus Thompson sat vigil, his calloused hands wrapped around the pale, limp fingers of his company's CEO. 24 hours earlier, Marcus had been just another overworked warehouse supervisor struggling to raise his daughter alone. Now, he was the reluctant hero who'd saved Caroline Walsh's life, and unwittingly set in motion events that would transform both their worlds forever. If you're moved by stories of unexpected connections that change lives, hit that like button and subscribe to see more real human journeys that remind us how quickly life can change direction. Marcus hadn't planned on becoming anyone's savior that rainy Tuesday evening. The warehouse staff had already gone home, and he was working late again, trying to finish inventory before rushing to pick up his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, from the after-school program that was already charging him late fees he couldn't afford. The last person he expected to see was Caroline Walsh, the newly appointed CEO of Meridian Shipping, making an unscheduled visit to their facility. "Mr. Thompson," she had called out, her voice echoing through the cavernous warehouse. "I was hoping to speak with you about your efficiency proposal." Marcus had been stunned. His ideas for improving warehouse operations, submitted months ago, had vanished into the corporate void. He'd assumed they'd been dismissed along with so many other suggestions from floor workers. Yet here was the CEO herself, portfolio in hand, wanting to discuss them. "I've been reviewing operational costs," Caroline explained as they walked between towering shelves of merchandise, "and your suggestions could save us nearly $2 million annually. I wanted to see the floor layout myself before tomorrow's board meeting." The conversation had been going well, until Caroline suddenly pressed a hand to her temple, swayed, and collapsed at his feet. The seizure that followed terrified him. Acting on instinct, Marcus had called 911, performed first aid, and ridden with her in the ambulance, calling his neighbor to pick up Lily and explaining to the paramedics that Caroline had mentioned a medical condition but hadn't specified details. For hours, Marcus had sat in the waiting room, making calls to the company's executive team from Caroline's phone. When the doctor finally emerged, his face was grave. "She's stabilized, but her condition is serious. Does she have family we should contact?" "I don't know," Marcus had admitted. "I'm just her employee." That night had changed everything. When Caroline regained consciousness the next morning to find Marcus dozing in the chair beside her hospital bed, her surprise quickly turned to gratitude. "You stayed," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I couldn't leave you alone," he'd answered simply, thinking of how he'd felt when his wife died 3 years earlier, with no one but him to hold her hand. The neurologist diagnosed Caroline with a previously undetected brain aneurysm that had nearly ruptured. She would need weeks of recovery before returning to work. When the hospital staff assumed Marcus was family and the company executives treated him as Caroline's designated contact, neither of them corrected the misunderstanding. It seemed easier that way, at least temporarily. What Marcus didn't anticipate was Caroline's request that upended his carefully structured life: "I need someone I can trust during my recovery. Someone who sees me as a person, not just the CEO. Would you consider being my temporary assistant? The company would double your salary, and you'd have flexible hours for your daughter." The offer was too good to refuse for a single father drowning in medical bills from his late wife's cancer treatments. Yet it thrust Marcus into a world he'd never imagined entering, the executive floor, with its glass offices and corporate politics. The warehouse supervisor suddenly found himself managing the CEO's calendar, sitting in on board meetings, and becoming privy to company secrets that made him both valuable and vulnerable. Caroline's recovery revealed a woman far different from the corporate image she projected. In her weakened state, she shared her fears about leading a company as a young female executive constantly undermined by older board members. She confessed her loneliness in a city where she knew no one outside of work. And she admitted her admiration for Marcus's dedication to his daughter despite his circumstances. "How do you do it?" she asked one evening as he helped her review quarterly reports in her penthouse apartment while Lily did homework nearby. "How do you keep going when everything feels impossible?" Marcus glanced at his daughter, her dark curls falling over her math workbook. "You just do. You find one good reason every morning, and you build your day around that. Their professional relationship gradually evolved into friendship, though not without complications. Office rumors spread quickly. Some executives resented Marcus's sudden access to the CEO. Others speculated about romantic involvement. The board chairman openly questioned Caroline's judgment in elevating a warehouse worker to her inner circle. Meanwhile, Marcus struggled to balance his new responsibilities with parenting. Lily initially thrived with the improved financial situation, new clothes, better food, no more worried conversations about bills. But soon she began acting out, jealous of the time her father spent with the lady boss, as she called Caroline. The crisis point came 3 months into their arrangement. During a pivotal board meeting where Caroline was defending Marcus's expanded efficiency program, Lily's school called. His daughter had disappeared during recess. Marcus abandoned the meeting without explanation, leaving Caroline confused and the board members smirking at this proof of his unprofessionalism. When he found Lily hiding in their old apartment building's laundry room, a place they'd spent many evenings when they couldn't afford to run their own dryer, she broke down in tears. "Are we going to move into her fancy building now?" Lily demanded. "Are you going to marry her and forget about Mom?" Marcus realized his daughter had created a narrative to explain the changes in their lives, one where her mother was being replaced and her father was being taken away. That night, he called Caroline and resigned from his position, explaining that his daughter needed stability and his undivided attention. Caroline's response surprised him. Instead of accepting his resignation, she arrived at his modest apartment the next day, still moving carefully from her recovery, carrying a children's book and a business proposal. To Lily, she said, "I brought this book because it's about a little girl who saved her whole town with one brave idea. It reminded me of your dad, who saved not just me, but potentially our whole company with his brave ideas." To Marcus, she handed a folder containing a new position created specifically for him, Director of Operational Efficiency, with regular hours, work-from-home options, and a salary that would finally free him from debt. "I don't need a personal assistant anymore," Caroline explained. "But the company needs your insight, and she hesitated, "I value our friendship. I'm not trying to intrude on your family, but I'd like to be part of your support system, if you'll let me." The months that followed brought unexpected healing for all three of them. Caroline became a mentor to Lily, encouraging her interest in science and showing her that women could lead. Marcus implemented changes that revolutionized the company's operations, earning respect from the executives who had once dismissed him. And Caroline found something she'd been missing since her rapid rise through corporate ranks: genuine connection with people who cared about her success as a person, not just as a CEO. A year after Caroline's collapse in the warehouse, Marcus stood beside her at the company's annual meeting as she announced record profits and credited the innovations that had begun with a warehouse supervisor's ignored proposal. Later that evening, celebrating at Marcus's now-renovated home, with Lily proudly showing Caroline her science fair project, Marcus realized how completely his life had transformed. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't come to the warehouse that night?" he asked as they washed dishes side by side. Caroline handed him a plate to dry. "I believe some people enter our lives exactly when we need them, even if we don't recognize it at the time." Their journey wasn't a romantic fairy tale, but something equally powerful, a story of two wounded people who helped each other become stronger, who built a friendship across social divides, and who discovered that family isn't always defined by blood but by who stands beside you when you need it most. By the time Lily graduated from high school 7 years later, with both Marcus and Caroline cheering in the audience, Meridian Shipping had become an industry leader in both profits and workplace culture. The company scholarship fund that Caroline established in Marcus's late wife's name had already sent 15 employees' children to college. And the warehouse where they'd first met had been redesigned based on Marcus's original proposal, becoming a model for efficiency and worker satisfaction throughout the industry. Life's greatest changes often begin in moments of crisis, when we're thrust into circumstances we never anticipated. For Marcus Thompson, a single father just trying to stay afloat, the night his CEO collapsed beside him could have been just another burden in an already challenging life. Instead, it became the catalyst for transformation, not through romance or miracle, but through the revolutionary power of being truly seen by another person. Sometimes, the family we need isn't the one we're born into, but the one we build through courage, compassion, and the willingness to reach across divides. Marcus and Caroline's story wasn't about falling in love, it was about finding connection in a disconnected world, about recognizing value where others saw only titles, and about creating space for healing even in the midst of corporate America. As Caroline often said in the leadership seminars she and Marcus eventually taught together, the most important asset in any organization isn't on the balance sheet. It's the human capacity for growth, resilience, and connection. It was a lesson they'd learned not in business school, but through their unexpected journey from CEO and warehouse supervisor to something far more meaningful, family, in the truest sense of the word.